Hey, Coach. So glad you found the video. Couple things. First of all, make sure you subscribe and like. Second thing, go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. Let me show you how to put a roadmap and become a nationally ranked coach. I've done it for 30 plus years. Let me help you do that over at teachhoops.com. Let's head off to the video.
Coaches, welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. I am your host, Coach Bill Flitter. Today we have a guest, Kent Mercer. Kent Mercer is the head athletic trainer at De La Salle High School. But before we get to Kent, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Game Changer. Game Changer is what keeps the lights on around this podcast. If you haven't checked out Game Changer, coaches, go to gc.com/Game Changer. It will seriously blow your mind. If you're a youth coach, high school coach, whatever type of coach you are, their basketball app is absolutely mind-blowing. And what it can do from a recording standpoint, stats standpoint, keeping track of your families, and if somebody can't make it to a game, the live video streaming is absolutely outstanding. Again, gc.com/coaching youth hoops. Kent, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, coaches, Kent is the head athletic trainer, at De La Salle High School in Concord, California. If you're in the sports world, you know De La Salle from their 200 plus game winning streak of football. A movie has been made about their coach. Kent keeps all the kids over there healthy. He's been in the sports medicine business for over 35 years, 26 of those years at De La Salle High School. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. He's married, has 2 kids. Just learned that one of his kids is following in his footsteps, going into medicine himself. So, Kent, I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I met Kent when I coached at De La Salle. He was on staff, and not only that, a very personal story. He basically kept my wife healthy when she had brain surgery and got her the rehab that she needed. So always in gratitude for the work that Kent does for not only kids, but for our community in general.
Thank
So
you.
Kent, we're going to talk about keeping kids healthy. I got a bunch of questions, but I'd just love to hear your story, how you got started, why this is such a passion of yours. I mean, to be at De La Salle for 26 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, I mean it's it's a special place, and I'm thankful for to be here and have the support of the school, the administration, and obviously our programs do well, and that makes things, that drives a lot of the things. But over that 26 years, we've seen a lot of changes in sports.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So, but this has always been something I've been passionate about. I kind of fell into it. It was obviously something I studied in school, and never didn't necessarily see myself being in a position like this. But when I was in grad school, I did an internship here at De La Salle, and after that first year, they invited me back again, and things just kind of fell into place, and it's been a wonderful place to be.
Yeah. So. Well, and let's dive in. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, we talk obviously about the skills. We talk about the mental side of the game, but this is the first time we've actually are diving deep into the body and the physical side, which we've all heard the stories, read the stories about young kids and overuse. Can you just speak to? You said, about these changes over the last 35 years of your career and what you saw 35 years ago versus what you're seeing today.
I mean, I think we're seeing certainly kids coming into the high school level now that are specifically doing one sport. It becomes a year-round adventure for them, and they don't change it up. They feel like they need to be just doing that one thing, which I think is unfortunate, both physically and mentally. I think sometimes they don't give themselves opportunities to try different things, and there's such a benefit for that,
Hmm.
physically, mentally, if they are doing different things. And
Yeah.
it's okay, they're not going to fall behind. They're still growing, they're still learning, still maturing, and this is the time when they should be doing multiple things. So certainly, we have an award that we give out at the school that for 3-sport athletes. If you're in a varsity sport, 3 different varsity sports, there's a special award, and we give it out like once every 5-10 years. It just doesn't happen.
Hmm.
And I understand, we play things at a high level, and but there's not that desire to try different things.
Yeah. Let's talk real for a second on that particular topic. Is how bad is it really for a one sport athlete?
Well, I think, you're particularly the high school kid,
Hmm.
that's maturing, they have open growth plates.
Hmm.
And if you're doing the same thing again and again and again, you're going to break down.
Hmm.
Or you're going to have these imbalances which create other problems. You take a thrower, for instance, you're constantly doing something one-sided, one direction, and you're not having that same balance on opposite side, and not giving adequate rest where things can kind of be reset. You're going to have issues. And the challenge is that kids don't often, they think of, they have discomfort and they're going to wake up the next morning and it's going to be gone. And then it just kind of progresses from there. And they attribute it to other things as opposed to what it is, because it's what they enjoy. But the biggest thing is with, kids, the open growth plates, and still physically maturing, yet we're asking them to do things that maybe they're not capable of doing, or doing on a regular basis.
Well, I think that's so true from even a cognitive standpoint. You know, and you're looking at it from a physical standpoint as well, throwing a fastball, right?
Yeah.
Or in the case of the football, right? It's just demanding and hard on the body, right? Two bodies smashing together like it is. So
Yeah, but even a basketball player that's,
yeah,
constantly jumping and they're going off the same foot, developing tendonitis. Well, that tendonitis progresses into, an avulsion fracture, because the bone is not as strong as the tendon and it's pulling it away. And,
yeah.
these are simple things that, if they're aware of it and they're changing things up, can easily be mitigated.
Well, and let's bring this down a bit to the younger level. So we're talking grade school. One of the things that I see, and I never want to be the cause of the problem. And so in my club program, I'm always pretty lenient with, or non-demanding, I don't know if that's the right word, but of multi-sport athletes, where I know there are other sports that they participate in. Soccer is one of the worst. Is you don't show, you don't play,
Yeah.
right? Or you miss X number of practices. You're sitting on the bench. I don't want to do that because I know for the kid that's not healthy, it adds stress to their life. But so now we're stacking. It's not uncommon for a young middle school person to play 3 sports in the same season, right?
Yeah.
So there's we talk about multi-sport athletes, but then, we're not saying in the same or stacking those either in the same
Yeah.
season or same time frame.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing.
So what is that? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about overuse then.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
sorry, go ahead,
not
Ken.
okay, I'm doing 3 sports and I'm doing basketball, soccer, and baseball all at the same time. But I think the challenge is too is that sports now there are no specific seasons. Everything feels like it needs to be going,
Right.
and they've all kind of creeped into each other. So and I think that's where coaches have to understand, families have to understand. You can't overload them physically like that, and figuring out how you can go about doing that. So it becomes a challenge because everybody needs to be on board with the same plan. And if you have a coach like you that kind of gets that, it's a little bit easier. But not all coaches are that way, or not all programs are that way.
Programs, yeah. And what are you seeing because you're seeing freshmen, right, come in early? What's the most common injury they're bringing to you in their first year of high school? What do you see?
I think issues that we tend to see are things related to growth plate, but which really comes down to flexibility. You kind of think about that kid at that age, they're growing, they're getting taller, they're gaining weight, they're gaining mass. Their body is responding to what they're doing. And oftentimes, one of the things that I such an emphasis on is just overall flexibility. What are they doing to work on their overall ability to move, the mobility and the flexibility of their body, so they can go out and move the way they need to when they're on the court? If you have somebody like a basketball player, if they're unable to rotate their upper body and kind of disassociate their shoulders from their hips where they can turn, then they're going to be in a position where they're still going to try to do it, but now all of a sudden that lower half is in a bad position, and then you're going to develop issues with the knee or have something that's compromised there, because they're going to try to do it, they may not do it the right way, and it kind of goes back to not having that proper flexibility and mobility.
That's a really good point. That's one of the things I'm always surprised about, with my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, is they can't touch their toes.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily something that they work on, and it's never really a priority. Coaches want to be out on the court emphasizing everything that's taking place on the court, but there's so many things that you can do outside of that to help improve the things that are going on there. And that's one of the big things that we work on with the kids, is getting them to understand. And it may not be during practice, but simple things that they can do when they're at home. They're sitting, reading, doing homework, they can be stretching out too.
Yeah, I often talk about that too. It's like you're sitting in front of watching a show, just take 10 minutes to stretch, do a few yoga poses, whatever you want to do. It doesn't take.
Well, I love foam rollers because it gives you feedback. It's going to tell you when you have an area that's tight or something that's different, right side versus left side. So it's giving you that feedback, and you need to, think about that, and it will correlate. Like if you have tightness in certain areas or you have deficiencies, it's going to appear as you get on the court. And it's with the amount that they're doing, I think the more that they can understand their bodies and how they're functioning and on a day-to-day basis, the better off they're going to be. And the earlier you can do that, the better off they're going to be, whatever sport they're doing.
Yeah. So if you had Well, actually, I'm going to hold that question. Let's talk about sleep.
Yeah.
Uh, where does that play into this equation?
So the three things that we talk about,
Hmm.
are flexibility and mobility. I kind of combine those two.
Okay.
Sleep and nutrition.
Mm.
Those are the things that are going to take a kid that's very talented. If they have those things in order, it's just going to bring them to that next level. And, you know, kids typically don't sleep enough,
Yeah.
or it's broken. And that could be for a number of reasons. It could be, the schedule that they have and not balancing out getting homework done, and but then also sound nutrition. There's simple things that they can do to make sure that they have adequate energy for when they get out there. Make sure that they're hydrated well. And these are things that they don't necessarily think about, but play a huge
Yeah.
part of what goes on when they go out there to compete. So,
That, yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say that's the one thing that just, uh, I would say irritates me, right? When I get a kid and, I can see it, they're yawning. Like, what? Like, one, I always think, and I know I need to be a little bit more empathetic to the situation, but it's like, they're kids. Why are they so drained? And I always ask him, well, how did you stay up last night? They're like, oh yeah, I was, doing X, Y, or Z, right? Either, like you said, I was doing homework, I stayed up and binged a show, I was on social media, I was talking to my friends, whatever it may be. But there's that lack of sleep, I think is detrimental. And I think that if we continue to have that lack of sleep, of all of the things, and again, this is my non-professional opinion, is sleep is number one, followed by those other things. If you don't get the adequate amount of sleep, then the flexibility, and what was the third thing you said? Mobility, flexibility, sleep, nutrition,
Nutrition.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Sleep is when our brains rest, our bodies recover, right? Um, anyway, I think it's we got to get kids to bed, pull the
Yeah.
phones away, turn the TV off.
And that's what's hard is, they don't necessarily attribute or see those things or
Yeah,
see how it affects them, whether it be in the classroom or on the court. And, they go out there and think, well, I'm functioning, I'm doing it. Well,
yeah,
if they had these things in place, they'd probably be doing it at a higher level. And, things would come easier to them. And so, yeah, those are some things that we really try to emphasize. Obviously, there's only so much control, but you really try to
yeah.
get the kids to understand. We'll look at heart rate variability, and seeing, like, when a kid wakes up, what's their heart doing, and
Mm,
you can start to see, like, okay, they're not getting adequate rest. They're kind of staying at this level that's inappropriate. And so then you start to look at other things that might be affecting that, family structure, or other
mhm.
things that we can kind of help to control, and in the sense of hydration, nutrition, and just getting them to understand.
Well, and
Um,
you bring up the idea of nutrition and hydration. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand there too. So, uh, you know, I see you drink water. You saw me take a sip earlier. I constantly carry a water bottle.
yeah,
It's created a habit in my family to carry a water bottle around. Because even when I monitor it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't have enough water today.
yeah,
And I would imagine, teenager, young person, whatever, they're not thinking about hydration. They're thinking about hydration while when they're tired because they just did their sport or during the sport, you take a
yeah.
water break, right? Coaches at least schedule water breaks. But okay, all the other time that they're not playing that sport, they're not thinking about nutrition is in
Yeah, and I mean,
bad.
we talk about
I mean, they're not thinking about hydration.
Yeah, I mean, we want the kids to be carrying around a water bottle all day long, and they're constantly filling it. So, we want to make sure that they are getting appropriate, because we know what we're going to ask of them when they go out on the athletic field. Regardless of the sport, we're going to ask them to do things that are going to be challenging. And if they're not prepared for that, it makes it very difficult.
Yeah. And I'm having technical difficulties here. I got to change this. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I saw you were slowing down.
Well, I'll just use this for now. There we go. Can you hear me okay, Kent?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So yes, no, exactly. I just think nutrition, hydration, huge thing. We talked about flexibility, mobility, sleep. If you had a magic wand, what would the day in the life of a high school, let's start with high school first. What would that look like, or an athlete, or a sports, an athletic kid in high school, right? What does that look like? And maybe you could talk broad strokes, maybe even over the year. Like, what's the magic wand situation here?
I think a lot of it's time management.
Hmm.
They have a lot of downtime. They need to utilize that time in a appropriate fashion, so they can get the things that they need to do completed, and then do the things that they enjoy. And I mean, obviously for me, the emphasis has always been on, okay, academics are first, and then the other stuff is secondary. And you should enjoy both: opportunity to learn in the classroom and opportunity to learn on the court. It gives you get those social interactions and that opportunity to be around friends and do something that hopefully you enjoy. So I think it's time management. So with the understanding that, okay, as a part of this, the sleep is a part of this, and I need to factor in those things. So, you get your homework done, you have some time after school before practice, you're doing some stuff. So it's not after practice when you're tired and you got to get home and eat and shower and you're trying to do the homework.
Yeah.
You just think about your day and you're planning things out, and it may not be that you got to sit there for an hour and grind this stuff out, but do a little bit so it's not as much later on, and when maybe you're run down at the end of the day and you don't want to do it. I think that's the biggest thing, and that's an important thing for kids to learn, especially as they go on. They need to be able to have that, because they may be on their own, as they go off to college. There's nobody there that's going to be telling them, you need to do this. It's like, you got to figure it out. And if they don't have those skills, if they've been like handheld the whole way, it can be challenging for them.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, the thing that comes to mind when you mention that is, it's okay to be bored too.
Mhm.
Right. And to, I know when you and I were growing up, like our summers felt so long, right? And or even just like a weekend, we'd get bored,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing to do, right? The typical complaint to your parents, right? And now I just think kids are just way overscheduled with everything, athletics and academics. At least I know in the Bay Area that it's that way, right?
Yeah, and I think it's challenging because they are, and they don't necessarily get that downtime or that free time where they can do whatever they want, and they miss out on those things where they get to kind of explore different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think and those are things that you have to factor in too.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you need those mindless activities.
You do, absolutely, right? Okay, I'm gonna ask you. Well, this is the only reason I had you on the show today, to answer this question. Of course, I'm kidding. It's you ask 100 people 50 will say it's one way, 50 will say it's the other way. Okay, you ready for the question?
I guess.
Basketball players, ankle braces or no ankle braces?
I think I look at it like, is there a history?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a misconception that if they're wearing ankle braces, they're going to lose strength, or that it's going to
Yes.
become a
It's the
bigger
number
issue.
one thing I hear all the time.
And it's not true. I think with our kids, we look at every situation different.
Mm-hmm.
I personally like them. If somebody is hurt or has a history, they will be taped or braced. The thing that's nice, we're around them all the time, so we can tape them. So there's consistency with that. But if they're going to be traveling, then they can have a brace, and I know at least they have some support. So I'd look at history, and then I think that's the biggest thing. I wouldn't necessarily brace someone just prophylactically, especially if there's not a history. But if somebody has a history of injury, then I think you've got to look at, one, getting that strength back, but then if you're going to be out doing sports as they're transitioning back in, giving a little bit of additional support.
Yeah, it's always, yeah, and I'm on the same page as you when it comes to that too. I think if there's a history, okay, it's time, right? I have a player on my team. I think this is going to be her third time with an ankle sprain, whatever, tweak. And I brought this up in conversation, and the first thing her parents said, well, she's going to have weak ankles then if she wears a brace. So I'm glad you brought that up. What other misconceptions are there in your field that we often say repeat to players?
Well, I think, like, you take an ankle injury, yes, that may be where the injury is, but that may not be where the problem is. Somebody can have hip weakness, and then that compromises the knee, so, or the footwear that they're wearing. This is a big thing for us. Kids always want to wear like what they think is appropriate for them, but maybe a horrible shoe. So then they're just setting themselves up for injury. So I think you have to look at, yes, addressing the injury, but then you also have to look at it, especially if somebody's having a chronic problem where they just continue to do it. Okay, maybe they're not getting that strength back and that motion back, and they continue to compromise themselves, or there's something else that's going on. And that's where I think you have to look at, like, okay, what other causes might this be coming from, rather than just a weak ankle.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Those are the things that we'll kind of look at. If somebody gets hurt, it's like, okay, what is the cause of this? And sometimes it's apparent. Sometimes it's over time you start to see it, but you're trying to put together this puzzle and figure out specifically what's going on with them.
What other, like the shooting sleeves, the other, I guess, wearables, if you will, that you recommend, and when, or types, or are they, or not? I mean,
well, I think the only time
knee braces, I guess, too, the sleeves, that fit over the knees, those types. I see players wear those, the compression shorts, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that, like the idea that they wear it on one leg and not the other, I don't know. As far as like wearable technology, there's things that we use. I think the only reason you would want to do it is if you're going to utilize that information that you're given. If you're going to take that information that is giving you and utilize that in a way that's going to benefit the team, the athlete themselves. And that's what's challenging about it. I think there's a lot of great things out there. We use a product called Catapult, which can track athletes, and they use it specifically in basketball. And other sports, and but it doesn't make sense to do it unless you're going to utilize that information that you're getting from it, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll use it for things like load management, because obviously as you
Yeah.
go through a game, one athlete is doing something different than everybody else that's out there, and you can look at over time on court, time with possession with the ball, time on defense, time on offense, whatever it might be. There's simple things that you can do, and then manage that appropriately. Manage your practices based on that information that you're getting. But if you're not going to do anything with it, I think it just gets overkill.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to sit through a college basketball practice, and they used a wearable, and the the person monitoring everybody, just sitting on the sidelines, was in constant communication with the coach. I just thought it was really fascinating that they're relying on the technology to look at the wear and tear on the team and the exertion. And they, in this particular case, they did have a game. I don't know if it was the next day, maybe the day after, and they wanted it to be a light workout. And so they set kind of I don't know all the details, but they set a max of like the threshold they wanted to reach. And then when it got near that max, then although they reached it quicker than they thought, and so they called practice short.
Yeah.
You stop the practice, and
That's
let
utilizing
the
that
college kids go in.
information and understanding
Yeah.
the value of it. So yeah, okay, if it makes you modify your practice, it's for the benefit
Mhm.
of the team and the individuals, but you have to be able to take that information and use it as it's intended. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So, again, this particular, audience that we speak to is, a lot of youth coaches, and let's bring it down to that level. They don't have trainers like you on staff, right? They're volunteer parents. Um, if they're going to give a message to their parents and their players, uh, what would you have them focus on? Maybe it is going back to the nutrition, the sleep, whatever. What would you tell them to help manage the load, so to speak, when they don't have this technology?
Yeah, but it could be simple things like, you
Hmm.
go to a tournament and it's like, okay, how much did everybody play? And then so those kids that are out there playing, they're getting that opportunity to improve their skills, whereas the kids that are on the bench and not playing as much don't have that same opportunity. Well, as you get into a practice, maybe they're doing some different things, or they're doing things so you can enhance the skills of the kids that are sitting on the bench.
Hmm.
You can give rest to those that may have played a ton. And it's challenging, but it could be very simple things like you're modifying your drills or how you're doing things. You're modifying your practice, because not everything that takes place during a game is equal with everybody that's out there. So,
Yeah.
and the hard part is you have a basketball player that's a great player, and everybody wants to win, so they're going to have them out on the court. Same thing with the pitcher.
Hmm.
This kid can pitch, they're going to throw the most innings, most pitches that they can. And but you're not necessarily developing those other individuals, and you're leaning on those that already have the skills. And so if you can balance that out, looking at overall volume, and this also goes into like understanding, kind of what we talked about before, like what else are these kids doing? What are
Hmm.
they doing
Yeah.
outside of this one activity? And it gets to be challenging, but I think, for those youth coaches out there, I think it's okay for a practice to be like, something that's different from what you might typically do. And it comes from understanding the kids. Like, you see a kid that comes to practice and they're tired. Well, is that true
Yeah.
for everybody? Maybe you play a game of tag, or you capture the flag or something different, where they're still working on skills that are going to carry over to basketball, but it's a little different for them.
That's a good, well, it's physically and mentally, it's good for them. We do, we'll do a game of dodgeball, right? Once in a while. Or we had, I have a leadership committee, and what they do is, they help celebrate the birthdays as a club. We have these mental challenges that they'll come up with, and these are kids that are coming up with these, and I love it. They brought in this one player she has two older brothers, literally had a storage case. It was ginormous, full of Nerf guns. So I'm like, bring it in, right? So we ended practice early, and these, I coach girls, and they're running around shooting Nerf guns at one another, and it was awesome. Like, joy, you know what I mean? And they were just
and,
having fun, and they were allowed to be kids.
and probably one of the things that they'll remember most. Not,
Yes.
nothing against basketball and stuff, but it's like they go anticipate
Yeah.
something, and it's a totally different activity, but still great for them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I think a couple more questions that, things that we run into as youth coaches on the sidelines. Okay, let's talk about pain versus injury, playing through pain versus an injury.
yeah,
And I know this is so hard,
sure.
right, to sit here and talk about, well, it depends, right? But maybe, are there things we could give coaches to say, questions to ask, or to dive deeper, or of course there's always that, oh, I'm hurt, I don't feel well because he's nervous, right? There's always those things. But pain and injury, pain versus injury, you
Yeah,
have
and
any
I think
thoughts?
it's challenging for kids as well. They're trying to understand pain is a new thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
What can they tolerate? Um, I'll always look at, how do they function? We get somebody that um, they roll their ankle as they're on the court and they come off, and are they able to bear weight on it?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have pain that's on a bony structure? But then it's like, okay, how are they? Can they do simple things? Can they do a calf raise? They go up on their toes. Okay, once they do that, can they jump? Can they jump in one spot? And then as they jump, okay, now can you run? What does it feel like? So I always look at function. And
Okay.
obviously we'll go through and we'll do an assessment, but for a coach out there that's just trying to figure out, if somebody's not moving the way that they typically do, and everybody knows, they know their players, they know how they do things, seeing that they're doing things different, I think that's where it becomes a concern. Somebody, they're having knee pain, and now all of a sudden they don't want to be jumping off that leg, or they're just moving one way on the court, not easily going right and left. I think those are things that you have to look at, because then their mind is telling them, like, okay, I need to accommodate for this. And that's where things can just progressively get worse. So always looking at,
It's good
how are they
function.
moving?
That's yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. The other issue, hydration or lack of, right? Somebody's dehydrated.
Yeah, I
What?
mean, I think it's an ongoing thing. And that, like,
Mm-hmm.
going back to like what we talk about with our kids, is they're carrying around a water bottle with them all day, and they're constantly filling it. I can give them specific numbers, like, I want you to have this many ounces of fluid, but I'd rather them just constantly drinking water and going to the bathroom. Is that happening? It should always be available to them. It doesn't need to be something that they're deprived of. So, whatever facility you're going to, or, where you practice, should be readily available. If it's not, everybody should know, and they need to come with fluids. Fluids can be, it needs to be something that you enjoy, that you want to drink. So typically when it's cold, and water works well. Obviously, there's a ton of other things that are out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, anything specific. Kids are usually getting, if they have sound nutrition, they're getting all the electrolytes and sugars and things like that they need outside of it. But then looking at your athletes too, is like, do you have somebody that chronically cramps? You go to a tournament and it's like, okay, we get into that second game or that third game or whatever, and it's like, this kid is consistently having a problem. Then it's like, okay, let's look at giving them some different things. And there's a lot of things that are out there, from Gatorade products and things like Drip Drop, where you just you add that to a bottle of water, and you can get some electrolytes back in.
We had the CEO of Drip Drop on the show talking about that. So
And
De La Salle, De La Salle, kids went to De La Salle. So
Yep. So I mean, there's great things out there. The things that I really want kids to stay away from, and what we continue to emphasize, is the energy drinks. You're artificially stimulating your body to, as if it's being active, and then they go out and they be active, and they just have to understand that it's detrimental to them. And this goes back to that sleep, that we talked about, where they need to understand it can't be something where you're artificially stimulating yourself to be ready to go out there and do whatever it is you need to do.
That drives me crazy too. With the I've had some athletes in the past in high school, chugging the those types of drinks, full of caffeine and sugar, right?
And even a lot of products that they don't necessarily understand, that are just designed to elevate heart rate, and you continue to do that, and there's going to be adverse effects with that. There's going to be adverse effects to their overall performance, and that's what they don't understand. So it goes back to that sound sleep, hydration, nutrition, that is so important.
I'm gonna share that message definitely with my families. Last subject, unless you want, you're gonna have the mic here in a second, talk about anything you want. But the other thing doesn't haven't it does come up. Haven't had too much of it, but obviously the whole discussion around concussions. That's I obviously have first aid background, and I'm always looking for that if I see, somebody hitting their head on the court. But I don't know where to go with this, because again, it's one of those subjects where I have to see the person in front of me, know if they have a concussion or not. But again, what tips would you give to a youth coach who's just volunteering his time to coach his kids or rec league?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is understanding the athlete. What is their demeanor? And it's easier when it's our kids, because obviously we see them on a regular basis. We know how they typically respond. Is that different? If we're evaluating somebody from an opposing team, somebody we don't know, I'll typically bring the parent down and, evaluate the kid and talk with the parent and say, is this demeanor different? Are there things that are off? I think rather than like feeling like you've got to do this, whole diagnostics, take them through balance, where they don't remember this or that. It's like, Are they different? And err on the side of caution.
Good point. Right.
And it's okay if they miss a game. It's not the end of the world.
Oh, I'm
And
glad you said that.
and it,
Yeah. Breathe, right? Breathe.
yeah. And it's like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen if they're out? They get some time to recover. Maybe it's not a concussion. Just because somebody hit their head doesn't mean that they have a concussion. Just because their head hurts doesn't mean that they have a concussion. And I think that's the challenge. Now, if somebody is diagnosed with a concussion, then making sure that they're going through those appropriate progression back to activity. So I think, once again, just understanding your athlete, and as you're around them, you see what their demeanor is like. You see how they act. You see how they act around their friends. Is that different? Well, different's not always good. And it's okay to, like, we'll take our time. It's not like this person has to be back in there. If that's the case, we got bigger issues. But, we'll take our time with someone, and you see how they are as the adrenaline kind of settles down and of the moment that
right. It's true.
It's okay to just kind of take them out of that environment and see how they continue to feel. This is not something that has to be assessed in the next 30 seconds.
Well, and that's why, dude brings up this thought of, I can't tell you how many times athletes hurt, when they're in pain and they're crying, not once do I ever say, stop your crying. I'm like, let it out. I know you're in pain. Just, it's okay to cry. Don't have to be embarrassed about it. Sometimes they're embarrassed about it, or they think, oh, I'm an athlete, so I'm not supposed to cry. And I'm like, let it out. Just get it out.
Sure.
It's okay. So,
and it's them starting
just,
to understand, what is this that's happening to me? And that's part of sport too. The kids
that's
have
right.
to get out there and kind of understand, like, okay, what is pain and what's appropriate and what's not. And, they're learning as well, especially with those younger kids.
Well, Kent, you have the floor. You got, if there's any, questions that I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about that you think is just really important, do you have a message you want to get out there to youth coaches? You got it right now. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I
The
don't know
hot
if
seat.
I love sports. I think there's so many things that you can learn about yourself and others. There's such a benefit to it. And I always look at it like organized sports is going to end at some point, whether it's high school, even before that, or college pros. At some point it's going to end, but I always want kids to have a passion for being active. And so, one of my, when they're here, is that they continue to love to be active. And if, an injury prohibits them from doing it, working to get them better so they can get back to whatever it is that they want to do. And that goes back to, trying different things. I remember my dad always used to tell us, he's like, he would want us to play golf. And I wish I played golf as much as he told me I should. But it's something that you'll continue to do for the rest of your life, or
That's a really good point.
And whatever it is, it may be basketball. It may be running, it may be swimming, whatever it is. But I want people I would hope that people coming out of our program or what we have here would just have a passion for always being active, even if it's not an organized activity. So they can continue that as they go through their lives.
No, and I think that's a good message to leave on. It's, we want people to be active the rest of their life. We know the health benefits of taking a walk every day, right? With all the research that now we're finding on, dementia and Alzheimer's, just walking and being active helps prevent some of those diseases. Kent, this has been an absolute pleasure. We covered a lot. This is a clinic in itself right here. I really appreciate your time and your expertise, and you've been doing it so long, and you've helped so many families and kids. You know, we appreciate your service. Hopefully, we can have you back on the show sometime in the future. I know we're going to get lots of questions on this. If you want, you know, anyone to connect with you, we can leave in the show notes. You can tell them now. But if, you know, you want to pitch something to the coaches or have them reach out to you, you
Yeah,
know,
I think, yeah, I'm happy to talk with people. You know, I think um, I learn a lot from how other people are doing things. So I'm always happy to talk with people about, you know, challenges that they might have, because I mean, our program is ever evolving. You know, we're trying to do the right thing, and there's always new things out there. So I'm happy to talk with people about that. I think the easiest way to get a hold of me is through email. And it's mercerk@dlshs.org, and I can put that on the show notes or something. And,
yeah, I'll put that in the show notes
but I
too.
think that's the easiest way, and I'm happy to talk with people. And there's always challenges, and I know it's challenging for coaches. You know, they're volunteering their time, and all of a sudden they get all these different things thrown at them that they're like, I just want to coach basketball.
Right, I know, right? Yeah, we have to talk, you know, talk about nutrition and hydration and the mental side of the game, and
Yeah.
now, you know, physical side of the game. And you know, that's why I don't think people, when I say that, I mean some of the outside, like, parents don't understand is there's all of that that goes into what we do. It's not just the sport. We have to be responsible for all of those other things, or the good coaches do, right? Should be thinking
Exactly.
about
The
that.
good coaches will take those things into consideration. And I think parents should look at that. Like, what is being offered through this? Because they're usually paying for it. And you know,
Right.
there's good coaches out there. And unfortunately there's some that aren't as good. So you know, certainly look and see what is it that they're teaching their kids, because it should be more than just sport.
That's right. Yeah. Well, again, Ken, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the show. And coaches, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the court soon. Take care, Kent.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Hey, Coach, so glad you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. Actually, if you did, subscribe and like, and then go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better.